All right. So, welcome to another episode of the Growth Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Reza. Reza is an old friend of mine, and he's joining us from Aruba, uh, from his newly opened bar restaurant, Bar 25. Um, uh, that's the gist of it. Rez, welcome. I really am happy that you're joining us, and especially from your new location in Aruba.
Thank you.
Uh, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll get into the questions.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting. I've never done a podcast before, so this is truly special for me. My name is Reza, as you said. I've been in the restaurant business for close to a couple of decades. My family, who when they immigrated to the States, like a lot of immigrants, opened a restaurant. I worked with them, and then I did the natural, going to college and doing the corporate thing, and then I came back to it about 20 years ago. Actually, we're almost at that juncture, and started small and it grew, and this is the latest one, which was in Aruba. This is a project that we've been working on for about, I would say, all in all, a little over 4 years. In trying to find a place and establish ourselves. And this particular one, with signing the lease and doing all the construction and everything, we're about 14 months into it right now, and we're gearing up to open private exclusively next week, and then shooting for a grand opening for January.
That sounds exciting. Reza is one of the people that I know that has one of the biggest hearts ever. Uh, and I am very happy that our paths crossed, that I met you, and that we've remained friends for however long it is that we've been friends for. It's over 20 years. I can tell everyone that. So, um,
24.
huh?
It's 24 almost.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a while. It's
Been a while.
so my first question that I always ask my guests is, tell us a little about yourself. Who are you? I mean, you started, telling us about what you do, but tell us a little bit about Reza. Who is Reza, and what are you about?
It's that's a tough question to answer for I think for anybody. Knowing who you are is a lifelong journey. So I don't know if I can quite tell you who I am. I can tell you uh, that who I am today is 48 years in the making, and 48 years of all sorts of different experiences that I know you've had yourself. Growing up in being born in Iran and growing up in Iran during time of war, and having to leave your home at a young age. Myself, I had to leave at 9 years old without my parents, without my siblings. My aunt and uncle came to Turkey, and they brought me over. At that age, uh, it's funny because when I look back at that particular experience, and I look at my two young sons who are 8 and 11, and at that time that seems so normal to me,
Yeah.
and now I look at it and say I can't even fathom the thought, right? But it's all a part of that journey that makes us who we are, and going to a new country, meeting new people at that age. And I was fortunate enough to have an aunt and uncle that were incredibly loving, and then a couple of years, but the rest of my family joined us, and like I said, we all banded together in hard times and worked and tried to build everything and try to achieve things like a lot of Iranians do, because that's who we're made of. And embracing our new home, our new country. Again, the blessing there is that we came to a country that welcomed us with open arms and gave us every opportunities that we didn't have in our own homes. And all of that has been the makeup, and finding our way, and everything from learning the language to learning a new culture, and then uh, kind of intertwining into that culture, I guess, is the best way
Mhm.
to put it. And then grow, and all of that has shaped my ideologies, looking at what my parents had to do and how they had to, with four children, restart their lives. And then putting that into perspective in what I do, and trying to provide for my family and how I see society and how what I want for them. In particular, if you ask me who I am as a person and who I am as a businessman, I think at this point those two things have come together a little bit for me. Finding out who I am and what I want. What levels of success really am I trying to achieve, and what does that mean for me? And one of the things that I think in the last 10 years that I've been working on is what's enough, right, for you before you start to share the wealth, right? And how do you create something that's different, and incorporating people into it and making sure that while you take care of yourself and your family, that you also are incorporating the people that help you build what you're trying to build, right? So all of that has kind of shaped me into who I am, right? And I have leaps and bounds to go. So I'm hoping before my chapter closes that I get somewhat close to it.
Yeah, man. I've seen you grow over the years. Um, I've known you, you know, since, I think when I met you, you were just done with college, uh, and, or maybe you might have you might have still been going to college, but I've seen you grow throughout the years, the very many projects that you've taken on, the different businesses you've started, and you know, when you're you don't, you may not see your own growth as much as somebody who's standing outside and seeing you grow, and whether it's like personal or business, professionally, all of that. Um, I've seen Reza grow over the years. So, but for the audience, I didn't know about the part that you just shared about, your aunt and uncle coming to Turkey and you moving to the US with them before your parents joined you. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up. What was, you know, after you left Iran, you went to Turkey. What happened? And then, just walk us through a little bit of how you transitioned into life in the US and what was that for you like emotionally?
No, sure. It's absolutely. Look, I had to leave because I was 9 years old, and at the time it was the peak of the Iran-Iraq war. So at 10, as you remember, boys weren't allowed to leave the country. So my parents were scrambling to get me out, and we tried once in Dubai, and we were rejected. So I had a few months left, and again my uncle, my dad's brother, and his wife, my aunt Judy, who's American, lived in Connecticut in this small kind of very small country town, and her cousin, and to a life of me, I should know the name, but I don't, was a U.S. senator. And I remember the letter with the stamp on it,
Yeah.
with the emblem on it, that he wrote to, and we went to Turkey, and they said Turkey might be a better option for us. So I remember going there I think we were there for like 2 or 3 months, and my aunt and uncle flew out there, and we gave them all the documents, so on and so forth, and I was able to get a student visa, and for them to bring me there. And the leaving, the images are so vivid. I remember we lived in Shiraz in Iran, and I remember getting into the car where my uncle was driving us to the airport, getting into a car with my dad, who was going with me to Turkey, and my mom, and looking back at my sister, my two sisters. My brother was too young, but there was, as a car was driving off, right? Just that image, right? And then
Mhm.
getting to the airport and having to say goodbye to my mother. And I remember, just the emotions of that was, it stays with you, right?
Yeah.
And I remember we flew to Tehran, and then from Tehran we flew to Turkey. And my aunt and uncle came and said this is something that not everybody gets to experience, even with family. They were just as loving as any parent would be, right? And they brought me over when we went there, and it was an amazing experience because I got to see America for what America is. I was thinking about this yesterday. It's funny you're talking about it because I remember I was thinking yesterday. I want to reach out. I talk to my uncle all the time. I talk to my aunt Judy from once
Yeah.
in a while, but I wanted to just tell them how I felt about this. Christmas to me, like when I think about Christmas, it's their home because it was
Yeah.
so. pure. It was so amazing. Like, I always try to recreate what I saw Christmas at their home for my children, because it was everything you would imagine. Like it was movie-esque, right?
Yeah.
Again, in this, they lived on a hill in this country town with these beautiful views, right? And it was that picturesque kind of Christmas. And her family, my Aunt Julie's family, was also really amazing people, and she taught me how to speak English. She started from cards, from ABC cards and so on and so forth. And I went to the school. Kids were amazing. It was very wholesome, right? It was a wholesome experience. Now, counter to that was when my parents moved here, and my dad wanted to move to the Boston area, and went to Brookline and found a place. Moving to Brookline was the opposite of that. It wasn't very welcoming. I was very outcasted. It was a different world. It was very
Yeah.
tough. So I moved during I think it was in the sixth grade, and there's a lot of bullying and a lot of things that we had to kind of fend for ourselves. And two parents that were working, I think they were each working. My dad was working three jobs, and my mom was working two jobs to make ends meet for us. And so you were left to figure things out for yourself, you know?
Yeah, I know what that feels like. So
Yeah.
how long were you away from your parents before they joined you?
I was away from my parents for a total of a little over 2 years
Wow.
before
Wow.
and
So you
they,
lived
they,
in
they came a
Connecticut?
little earlier, but they went to settle. And while they were trying to find a place for us to live, I was still with my aunt and uncle. My sisters are also there as well.
Okay. Okay. Um, and then they all came over together,
And
the
then we
rest of
all
the family.
moved to
Okay.
yes.
Okay. All right. And then so you grew up in Brookline, and uh you want to talk a little bit about what that was like, and you know.
Oh yeah, it's something that I'm very proud of the way we kind of establish ourselves. My parents, uh, the way they made their decisions were that somebody told them this is one of the better school systems, public school systems. And Brookline wasn't somewhere that we could afford. So six of us lived in two rooms. Those two rooms were our kitchen, where we slept, with one bathroom, one shower, and we all worked. I remember, at the age of 10, I would go work at this antique shop after school, moving things, and I would get $40 a week from the guy. And my sister Masa, I remember, like, she'd be up at 3:30 in the morning to do paper routes, and then after her paper routes were done, she would go. She was on the swim team. She would go to swim team, and then they would go to classes. They were in high school, and then after high school, she would go work at Burger King. After Burger King, she would babysit. We That's what we did, and then those two rooms became a two-bedroom apartment. Those two-bedroom apartment became a four-bedroom home that we were able to buy, and every step of it, we banded together and we really built something. And along the way, we didn't lose our sense of culture, but we also very quickly adapted to who we were. One of the things that helped us, I think, as children, of the four of us, my brother included, is that we were never given the opportunity to victimize ourselves. We were Anytime that we felt like the world was against us, we were forced to use it as a source of strength, not a source of weakness. And that was part of our upbringing, which really helped with everything else that we've done.
Tell me a little bit more about what is that mindset like? What do what can you give me an example of maybe something that happened that, where you had to use that mindset of, instead of getting angry and bitter, you take that and you
Every
say,
single day today, every single day, we look. I reach for the stars, and so do my siblings. And sometimes it's way out of our reach. And when I say way out of our reach, is an understatement, including this project. These are projects that a lot of people do with a lot of venture capital money behind them, a lot of investment behind them. That's not the case here. Everything that I have is, so I have to figure it out, and without cutting corners. And that's the fun part. It's when you get to the point where you feel like the world is crumbling, and one, to put things into perspective, to be able to take yourself out of a first person into a third person view of it, right? And then trying to figure out, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to figure out the next step? What are we going to do? And that's what owning business is about. It's not just me. It's people that do it and do it at a much higher level than I do it at. This is the thing is coming to those junctures and figuring your way through it as opposed to giving up, right? And one of the things that helps with that is that once you're focused on getting through that obstacle, the the thing behind it is if it doesn't work out, you know that you did everything you could.
Yeah.
That helps ease the process a little bit more, right? Because it doesn't always work out. But the failures don't break you because like I did everything I could. There was no stone that I left unturned, right?
Hmm.
And that helps a lot in that process as well. So to give you like a particular example, budgeting for something like this, right, in a foreign country, not knowing the ins and outs of here. This has been a cultural awakening for me,
Yeah.
right? I can easily tell you if I was from Aruba or if I was somebody that was familiar with how to do business in Aruba, we would have been open 6 months ago,
Hmm.
right? So we've had to carry 6 months of extra weight, extra expenses, so on and so forth, and figure things out while adapting to the way things are done here, right? And we're not nearly finished, but those are the things that you have to, and then you have to calm yourself because it's easy to lose your mind. It's easy to get angry. It's easy to give up. It's all that stuff. All those cliches are true. It's those that's the easy way out, right? But our characters really are shown in those moments when everything, this is something that I'm sure you've heard a million times. I've heard it, but again, there are truths in every bit of things that we use that we hear. And one of the things is, everybody functions great when everything's great. Our
Exactly.
character really comes out when where there are difficulties. How do you portray yourself? How do you compose yourself in those moments is what carries you through everything else in life.
So this is a great segue into my next question. Uh, but before I go there, I want to add to what you just said. This morning, I went to the gym. So I work out at a boxing gym where uh, our coach trains professional, you know, MMA fighters. And um, we were having, a little celebration in the morning right after our workout because it was a couple of people's birthdays. And we were just talking, and we are talking about the champion mindset, like what does it take for you to become a champion? And I think it's very much what you just said. It's all up here and it's about resilience. It's about, in terms of an MMA fighter, when that cage closes and it's you against that other person, it's all about not giving up, going the distance, getting kicked and punched in the face, and just being like, okay, I need to go through this. Like, this is not, it's overcoming adversity, and just working at it. It's not, you don't throw your hands up and walk away. And I think that's essentially what you just said is you gotta, you know, plow through it.
Yeah, you do. You're absolutely right. It is, and it's that mental strength. It's the muscles up here that are the most important. It's the thing that I try to teach my kids a lot, especially my 11-year-old as he's going through, he's transitioning through, it's starting to go through puberty and playing sports and all these things, all these challenging things that are going to come his way. Right. That's the most challenging. Those are the most challenging years. Right.
Yeah,
And the one thing I try to tell them, like this is it. This is more important than everything else because once you got this right, everything else will follow through. Right?
exactly.
And that's but it's also the most difficult one.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
you're absolutely right.
yeah. Okay, so my next question is usually, how did you get to where you are? And, you've talked a little bit about that, but what I would love for you to do is, if you could walk the audience through the very first business that you started, um, and up to where you are now because you talked a little bit about it, but I want the audience to get a sense of what you started with and what and talk to me about numbers and I don't know what the metrics are in the restaurant business, but in terms of, revenue, the number of people you serve on a, monthly or yearly basis, whatever it is that shows your progression. If you could just walk us through, and feel free to share as much or as little as you want. I always say it, in this podcast, I don't want people to, you know, feel uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
whatever you want to share, but I want you to sort of give us a glimpse into, you know, where you were and where you are now in terms of, growth and progression. And I think that will really solidify what you just said about, you know, moving up and reaching for the stars. Uh, so yeah, go ahead.
It's first of all, yeah, you know me. My life is an open book.
Yeah,
There's nothing secretive about anything that I do. I love sharing it because I think one, but parts of it are funny, and the other parts of it I think are helpful. And then sometimes just talking about it puts things into perspective for me. But
yeah.
I was at UMass Amherst for undergrad, and I was about to graduate. And as I told you, my restaurant business is what my parents got into eventually after they were able to save some money from all sorts of the odd jobs that they were doing, and they became pretty successful at it. And but the way that they had to do it was very limited because they didn't have room for risks because they had four children, so they couldn't really move as we say probably they couldn't move right or left with it. They had to walk a straight line, right? And so that takes out some of the creativity. And they're both very creative people, but it takes out some of that creativity away when you have to function that way. But I remember I was graduating, and I was like, out of my siblings, I was the only one that worked with my parents in the two businesses that we had, and uh, I was like, this is what I want to do. So I told my parents, I want you guys, I want you guys to bankroll me in a restaurant. I want to open a restaurant. At first I said I want to open a restaurant in Amherst.
Mhm.
And my dad said, absolutely not. He was like, I'll tell you what. There's a little sandwich shop in Boston. There's a bay. It's called New Market Square. Right? New Market Square is where all the wholesalers, everything that goes to hotels, restaurants, so on and so on, from meats to vegetables, you name it, goes from these bays. He goes, there's a sandwich shop that feeds the people that work there. The guy wants to retire. I go and he goes, here's $5,000. Go buy it from him. Right? So he gave me 5,000. I went to the guy. I'd been working there since the 60s. I was like, can I buy this from you for 5,000? He goes, yep. This is as easy as that. So I bought it, and mind you, like this is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and work started at 3:30 a.m. So going from college and partying and socializing and doing all this stuff, and having and going to graduate thinking that you're gonna go like any other kid, you're gonna go capture the world, to having to wake up at 3:30 in the morning and go feed people. Really nice blue collar people, but all work in fridges and freezers all day long. So they're not very happy to say the least. And I remember I borrowed another $3,000 or $4,000 from my dad to fix the place up,
Yep.
right? And I started, I work there every day. I was up at 3:30 going there. I was miserable, but like I said the people there they were very funny to be around. They weren't always happy, but they had great sense of humor.
Yeah.
So it was great to kind of just be around those people. And I always say it. I was like, it's funny that venture for me might have had like the best return on dollars for me, because I remember I paid back my dad the $4,000 that
Hmm.
I that wasn't part of the 5K kind of like graduation gift that I had gotten. And then I worked there. I made very little money, but I made a few bucks. And then a year later, I sold that place for $32,000. So it's
That's
if you
pretty
put it,
good.
it's a pretty good return after a year.
Yeah.
But it built a lot. The place was called, I call it Reza's Last Bite. I was going to call it Last Bite, and then I put my name in front of it, and really that was from a movie where there was a love scene. There was a love story and not a love scene, but a love story in the movie, and uh, the female character said, a man loves you if they're willing to give you the last bite of their sandwich, right?
That's funny.
That's true love, right?
Yeah.
And that always stuck in my head. So that was the first place, was called Reza's Last Bite, right? And then when I sold it, I actually had I blew through that money because I didn't know how to, I was still young, didn't know how to like manage anything.
Hmm.
And I had a degree in I had a collaborative degree in economics and business. So not something that was very specialized. There's not much you can do with a undergrad economics degree, for example. And I was applying for jobs and I was running out of money, and that might be one of the most bleak moments of my life, and that includes growing up during war, right? Because I just felt like I just felt like a failure. I, to to sum it up, right? And I remember I was applying for jobs. Nothing was really going through. Nothing that was really great. And I remember I was at a game. I was at a soccer game with a bunch of Iranian people, like some of the older people that I've known since I was 9, 10 years old.
Hmm.
And one of them asked me very bluntly, "What are you doing with your life?" And I said, "Not a whole lot. I'm looking for jobs, so on and so forth." And I said, "I'm not getting anywhere." He goes, "Well, send me your resume and I'll send it to my brother." And I remember his brother. His brother used to work for uh, for GE Aerospace when it used to be. I think it was either in Lynn. It was outside of Boston. I remember. And so I remember I sent him the resume, and his brother called me. That was from Arizona. He was at that time. He was actually the vice president of global sourcing for
Hmm.
Honeywell Aerospace.
Yep.
And I remember, and you had touched on what. Hold on one second. Sorry, as I think something just happened on this. I apologize. I know we're. Let me
You're
just.
fine. You're fine.
Um, hold on. The thing just changed. The screen just changed. That's why. Sorry. So I think I got it back. Yeah, if I think you were asking like what shaped you, what are things, and one of the people that shaped me. I've had two mentors in life, and one of them was Amir. Amir was the brother who was the vice president of global sourcing, and he was one of the people that truly shaped me as an adult and the
Hmm.
way I think and the way I go about things. And I remember he called me and he very truthfully said, "Your resume is all over the place. Your educational background doesn't really match what we do in supply chain management here, but I'm willing to help you out and get you some interviews." Right? And I said, "Great." A couple months passed, didn't hear back, and then all of a sudden I got a call and said, "Book a flight for this date. You have 17 interviews in 2 days in Phoenix." Right? And I got my best suit, got on a plane, went to Phoenix, and did those 17 interviews, which I'll tell you was excruciating because going from one to one and still keeping the same presence of mind, back to back to back, right? And I went through all of them, and most of them were really good. Some of them obviously were technical. I didn't know anything of what I was talking about. It was just kind of trying to sell who I am. I remember at the end of it though, I thanked him. I got on the plane. I went home, and one of the departments gave me a contract position at an entry level, administrative level, and I took it. Right, came back in with a contract. Long story short, I was there. I was with Honeywell Aerospace for 3.5 years. In those 3.5 years, they made me a permanent employee, and I got promoted 6 times. I went from being administrator to becoming the team lead for supply chain recovery in the Northeast. Right, and I remember along that time, and as much as I could, I would have these mentorship sessions with Amir. And I remember one time I said to him, I said, "I don't know how to thank you. I hope someday I can repay you. I can show you my gratitude for giving me this opportunity. Nobody else would have given me this opportunity." And I remember his response was this, like, "Reza, I have everything I want in my life. You want to pay me back someday. Then you have to tell me about it. When you're in a position, he said, I didn't get you a job. What I did was I opened a door for you. So someday when you're in the position, open doors for other people." Right?
Yeah.
Again, I have carried that with me every single day of my life since he said that to me. after the 3 and I left not because I loved the job. The job was great, but I kind of wanted to get out of the Phoenix area, come back home. Boston's always been home to me, and I always have this odd, really masochistic love for the food and beverage business because, and the reason why I say that is I always tell people, I'm like, if you don't love F&B, you don't love hospitality, you're out of your mind to do it because it is the toughest business to be in.
Yeah.
But I came back, and with the money that I had saved up, I borrowed a little bit more money, and I opened my first restaurant in Amherst. It was a Persian restaurant. A year later, I opened a nightclub in Amherst. I always loved Amherst area because I thought it was a really good business area, and a lot of failures in those two, and a lot of successes. And but it really shaped the way I want to do businesses. What I learned in those when I had Moti, the Persian restaurant that I opened in Amherst, what I really truly learned in that time was who do I want to be in this business? Because all along I had carried kind of my parents' ideology about the business. And
Mhm.
coming to find out what I told you earlier, which is you have no room they had no room for mistakes, right? So they couldn't be creative. They were always angry. They were always tense. It was all this stuff that I really wanted to part ways with or just say goodbye to that industry forever. So the
Mhm.
turning point was I think in 2015, 2016, where I came to realize that everything that I do and all the successes that I have is because of the people that are around me, right? And how do we reward those people, right? And I'm not talking about just friends. And friends and family are there, right? Friends and family were an amazing part of it.
Yeah.
Mentors were a huge part of it. But it's the employees, right? It's the people that work for you that give you that dedication. Not all of them do, but the few and far that do are worth everything, right? Because because that's what carries you through. And so I came up with this idea that I want to develop. How do I make my stamp in the food and beverage business, which is take the enslavement mentality out of it, right?
Mhm.
Not go uh, to the corporate side of it. That because in that period is when restaurants had gone from being mom and pop and kind of transitioning into this corporate mentality, right? So how do we become a corporate mom and pop, and then also give
Okay.
people the the chance to grow and give them a light at the end of the tunnel where they don't feel like they're just pigeonholed into what they're doing, right? And I started working on that little by little because I it's not like I had venture capital behind me, and it was building a culture, and that culture is like building a home. You have to build the foundation for it. When you tell people certain things, you have to stand by it, right? It can't just be words. One of the a word that gets thrown around a lot in hospitality is family, right?
Yeah.
The word on the side of the business, like we're
Yeah.
family, we're family, but it's own for a lot of places, it's just a word they use, right?
Yeah.
How do you create that family? Because it really is.
So tell me about that culture that you're talking about. What is, what are the characteristics of that culture that, that hybrid culture where it's not, you know, I guess what you're saying or what I'm hearing you say is the mom and pop, there isn't a lot of structure. It's not, it's whatever. You build the plane as you fly it.
Yeah,
Whereas in the
you're hoping it
corporate,
keeps on flying.
yeah, exactly. And in the corporate sort of, you know, hospitality, restaurant business, everything is set, it's do everything by the book. There's no room to wiggle or
There's no creativity. There's no love, right? And it's not a knock. Don't get me wrong. This is not a knock on corporate restaurants,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But I
Restaurants.
think that works. I think that works for a specific business model, maybe like McDonald's. It's very, cookie cutter. This is what the product is. This is how it's made. From A to Z, everything is deterministic in a sense. But what you're talking about is a middle area, a middle ground. And what is that? What went through your head, and what is it that you came up with? Because I think this is really fascinating. It's like, business leadership or thought leadership essentially in this business. Yeah.
what it was is that you start off with looking at the fact that nobody can go it alone, right? So you do need a team of people, right? And what you want is that team of people to be just as vested as you are in what you're doing, right? So how do you create something that's attractive to them? Because we're talking about an industry that has no weekends, right? You have no nights with your family. Like the reason the family term is thrown a lot around is because we spend more time with behind these closed doors than we do with our own families, right? But how do we truly become a family, right?
Mhm.
And then how do we give opportunity to those people as they grow, right? So not over promising people, not become like a used car salesman, right? Becoming setting an expectation, managing those expectations, right? And then see how you can kind of hone that together, right? And I'll tell you, like this started in 2015, 16. It's like now 10 years later is when it's come to fruition a little bit for us or for me. And the biggest challenge is keeping people motivated, right? So you first have to with yourself come to some realizations and face reality, right? People say, "Oh, money's not everything." Well, money is kind of everything because the way we function is money. It's the way we make money is what makes us different, right?
Mhm.
The difference is there. It's not that money's not everything. It's just the way we do it, right? Are we sleazy about it, right? Are we doing things that are we conning people just to make more money, so on and so forth, right? So so I always made the money. Hey, this is your motivation here, right? And then here's my outlook on what I want to do in the food and beverage business. One was to take away the enslavement mentality of it, right? So we know that we can't have a normal Saturday and Sunday off, right, as a weekend. But I made it a thing where Sundays and Mondays are going to be off, no matter how lucrative a Sunday could be. Mondays are not really so it's easy to part ways with Monday, but Sundays, right? One of the things that I hated about growing up in the restaurant business was I had a Monday off and I had a Thursday off. I could never enjoy the Monday or the Thursday, right? And it was always hustle, 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 right? And and then teaching and educating the people that want to be a part of it, right? So you want to see who'll drink the Kool-Aid, right? And part of that is educating them on whys and everything, right? So I always tell my employees, if you have an expectation of me, I have an expectation of you. It's not, my expectation is not because I'm the hierarchy here, right? The expectation is you want me to do something for you. The place has to make money for me to be able to do that. And I'll tell them, I said, look, if we make $10 in profit, yeah, I want five of it, but I'm willing to share the other five,
Yeah.
right? I don't want nine or 10 of it,
Yeah.
right?
And that's
And
a huge shift,
it's a huge
right?
shift. It's
Yeah,
a huge
that's a
shift
huge
because
shift.
people
Yeah.
don't do that. They
Yeah.
become greedy, right? And and so again, building those things, and then hey, if this one place that we're going to go to, if it's successful, and we open the second place, if I had two people with me that were committed, right? You're the first promise was if you're here full time 3 years, you get sweat equity in the next project that we do, and so on and so forth, right?
Mhm.
And the way I structured that as sweat equity was beneficial for both of us. Again, honest. Everything is said to every single person honestly up front, right? And the way it's structured is that no, I'm not going to just give you a piece of this company because you could just leave the next day, right? But also, if I gave you the piece of a company and we started it started to fail and we started to lose money, you're on the hook for those percentages. So the upside of that is you gain, but you don't lose. Okay. And for me, like I said, I don't chance the fact that somebody's just going to walk away and take that because we work with such small margins in this industry that could destroy you, right? So that all started in 2015 and it built to this amazing crew of people, right? That today I'll tell you, like they have more handle of it than I do. They have more understanding of it than I do, right? And everything, including this project in Aruba, they're in it and on it. When we decided to do Aruba, it was because this is a second location for our flagship in Newburyport. when I went to my team, my executive chef, my corporate manager, assistant manager, my bar manager, some of the people that are even the supervisory level, hey, listen, we have an opportunity. We like the opportunity is not just to open somewhere tropical. There's a really good business opportunity here, right? It has all the foundation, and for our branding, it would be amazing,
Yep.
right? Do you guys want to, do you want to do that, or we can open just a second location in another town that's similar to the one that we're in, like Newburyport, and we could build and where we're not cannibalizing ourselves, and it's a lot more manageable. It's not a 5 hour flight to another, to another continent. But what do you want to do? And these are the realities of it. Don't think of it just as a don't romanticize it. Oh, Aruba, Caribbean, so on and so forth. This is going to be hard work. And we decided on, yeah, this makes sense. And part of that thing was, hey, we open it, the core people, they're going to come here. And we've already done that. A month ago, I flew out in 2 different weeks, 2 different crews that came out here to do some minor training and go back and still enjoy being here. I have a second crew coming this week. And if this place does what I wanted to do, we're going to send some of these people up to Boston and have them experience that, right? That's part of that. That's the Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of money to spend. A lot of people won't do it because that's the money that they put in their pockets or take their families on vacation, so on and so forth. It's understanding that this doesn't happen without them. I can't be here building a restaurant and simultaneously my businesses over there are running just as smoothly, if not smoother than when I'm there without these people, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be a reward for that hard work, not just an enslavement mentality.
I love what you just shared because I feel like what it shows is that sometimes being generous in the uh short term, you feel like it's a loss. Like it's like, you know, I could have taken this money for me. But if you're, well, I shouldn't, it's the opposite of generous. Being greedy in the short term leads to you losing money in the long term, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can't grow. And and so if you're generous in the right way, it's not, you're not just doing it for the hell of it. You're doing it because it makes business sense
Yeah.
that, you share in the profits with the people who are willing to put in the work, knowing that you need this crew to build the next one and to grow to get together. And I think that is not the typical corporate mindset
Right.
or the mom and pop mindset. I think neither of those groups, you know, uh, get their employee. I mean, there are some companies I've heard of grocery store chains that have, profit sharing between their employees, etc. But not too many corporations. I don't know anything about the food and beverage business, but in general, there aren't a whole lot of companies that share profits with their employees. But the ones that do, I worked for one that did that. It incentivizes the employees, it gets them to be more committed. There's less turnover. It's just a better working environment because you're right. I think that's what could lead to making that work environment feel more like family. So, but I want to move on. We got about 10 minutes left. I want to move on to, growth and what that means for you. But just to give folks a sense of, how far you come from Last Bite, uh, can you share with us like the number of customers or some metric that shows your progression from Last Bite to Moti to Lit to Bar 25, and you had two locations of Bar 25 in Massachusetts. So can you just share with us, what that progression looks like in terms of numbers?
Absolutely. So Last Bite had no seats inside of it. It was just a takeout, carry out. It was I think the whole space, including the back room and everything, was less than 700 square feet. And the the revenues weren't anything to ride home. So like $500 or $600 a day, I think was like kind of just the way it went. A good day was $1,000 over there.
Mhm.
And Moti originally was 16 seats. We end up it did so well that we end up taking the next door space and expanding it to doubling it. It was 32 seats. And then the nightclub was just something that I wanted to do. It was great. It was, and that I think I might have learned more from that particular project than anything else, of how to maneuver through things and how to utilize kind of business skills, economic skills. Believe it or not, like a lot of that stuff I learned in that nightclub. But there was a 200% capacity. It was very limited in business because it was 2 days a week, 7 months out of the year. It was in a college town, but the learning experience was incredible over there. And
Mhm.
then the first Bar 25, which was in Central Mass, had also 26 seats. And I did that project. I'd never done anything in craft cocktails, and it was a town that was kind of up and coming, a lot of young professionals, traditionally a blue collar manufacturing town, and it was a good test market. And we always called it that. It was like, this is kind of like test grounds to learn something, because you never ever in this business, you rise, you fall as quick as you rise. So you have to be very careful. So we tested how to do these classic craft cocktails, how to kind of like adjust to that 1920s Prohibition era theme that we were doing, and then simultaneously infuse this very unique menu into it, right? And then that led us to, and a year into that was COVID, by the way. 14 months into opening that location, COVID happened.
Yeah.
And the saving grace there for us was that we were in a small town. That's when a lot of communities just banded together. If we were in a bigger market, we would have been one and done, right? The experience we had during COVID was unlike most other restaurants. We actually doubled in business during COVID, right?
Wow.
And one of the things that again, like thinking on your feet, like I had this, like I had 7 employees there, and meeting with them, like, what do you guys want to? You can go home. Like, I can't keep you here, because we were within a day they were told us we can go take out and delivery only, right? And we were a sit down restaurant and bar. We had never done one single takeout since we've been there in 14 months, right? And now we had to adjust to that. And we had there was no cash flow, there was no money behind it. What do we do? So almost all but one person was like, no, we want to work. We don't want to be at home, right? And I remember one of the things that I did that helped us was I went online and I said, anybody that buys in the next 48 hours, it was March 20th, I think, was the shutdown, 2020, right? March 21st being Tuesday, we started doing takeout delivery. On that Tuesday in the morning, I said, in the next 48 hours, whoever buys a gift card from us, we'll match it dollar by dollar, right?
Mhm.
I remember we sold $7,000 worth of gift cards in
Wow.
those 48 hours. That that gave us our own bridge loan, right? Before anything else came from the government. But that gave us the ability to get takeout containers and this, that, and the other, and kind of adapt to that whole thing. And we actually were able to showcase ourselves better in that time. I remember at one point, within 2 weeks into it, there was a line of cars on each side of the street just waiting for us to get food out to them, right? It was a surreal experience, and I was in the kitchen cooking, and there were tickets. There's a scene in The Bear that gave me that I felt like I had PTSD when I watched it. There's the tickets would be rolling off to the ground, and and we had like said cars waiting outside, we're behind, so on and so forth. I remember at one point I turned on, there's a young kid that used to work for us. His name was Joey. He's really, really funny, but very energetic kid. And I said, I can't do this. And I remember he grabbed me by my shoulders and said, Reza, you could do this. And I said, you're right, we could do this. And we went right back into doing it. But that gave us the grounds to look at the space, this gorgeous 3-story brick, 250-year-old brick building in downtown Newburyport, which to me is one, quintessential New England town. And everything you want out of that experience. It's just beautiful, and it's lively, and it's amazing community of people. It has its own kind of almost internal economy, right? Because people are so supportive of local over there. But I
Mhm.
remember um, everybody was at that point either walking away from their restaurants and closing, like just closing it, uh, or just handing it over to somebody. There were no transactions being made, and this place was for sale, and I bought it. And I remember when I remember I got a call from the person that I bought it from, upset at me. She said, "You went to the papers about that." I said, "No, I didn't. What are you talking about?" She said, "There are three news, is eight NBC Boston, New England News Channel, and one other. They're standing outside. They want to have an interview about the sale of this place." And I said, "Maybe because they think who's the idiot that bought a restaurant during COVID." And she started laughing. And I was like, "Look, I didn't tell anybody. I don't know how they found out, but they found out. I'm assuming it's not because they're trying to cover some big purchase. They're just trying to figure out,
Yeah.
who's the village idiot." And but I bought it because I walked into it and it was amazing. And I like all along, even from the first day of COVID, like, hey, the world ends, the world ends. We have no control over that. That's the same mentality as I told you when you walk through problems, right? Obstacles is that you can't worry about what you can't control. That's what I learned from Amir. Amir early on taught me that. He's like, whenever I told him issues that I had, he's like, we're going to separate your issues on things that you have control over and things that you don't have control over, right? We have no control over the world ending because of COVID. That doesn't mean life stops. That doesn't mean that I stop providing for my family, feeding my children, right? So when I saw this thing, I absolutely wanted it. It was a no brainer,
Yeah.
right? And then and luckily it was the best decision I made in my tenure. And it was and in between, sorry, I did miss Limu. Limu was another project that we did that was really successful. But all in all, this is the eighth restaurant that I've built out
How many
myself.
seats? How many seats in the last one?
170 seats, 3 floors,
So you
and
went from no seats to
just
170,
170 seats.
3 floors.
Yeah,
And the place is gorgeous. So if
it,
you're ever
it's
in Newburyport, head up Bar 25. I've been there. The food is amazing and
like,
the ambiance is phenomenal. So
and it
uh,
was the numbers are not like I said, not over this section, but it went from selling. Let me see, so selling like $250,000 a year, or 300,000, less than $300,000 a year in last fight to running a $3 million operation,
yeah,
right? So that's the one in between. And look, there are restaurants that do 10. There are restaurants that do 20 million,
yeah,
right? The thing for us, and the reason it's that you have to know where you want to be, right? The biggest thing is I told you, how do we make this corporate mom and pop? To make it a mom, the food business is about love. It's not some cliche or some cheesy thing that people say, right? And the love is through the product that you put in, the food and drinks that you put in front of people. And the love can't be lost. You can't have a generic menu, right? So yeah, we can be in a location that could do $10 million a year, but there'll be no love in that. It would just be another generic menu, and we're just pumping out food,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
We have an executive chef who cooks like he's cooking at home for 170 people, right? And 170 people with multiple turnovers on a Friday and a Saturday night, right? But one of the things that he said to me, and that you want an example, like this thing lives and dies by our corporate manager, her assistant manager, and our executive chef, and then our bar manager, right? But I've talked about this experience. I've not talked about it for years, and then with Aruba opening, I've said this story multiple times. I remember when I met Joe, right, and we sat on the third floor of Bar 25 in Newburyport, and we were talking, and we just ended up talking for 2.5 hours. Not an interview. We were talking about our food experiences. That's all we talked about. Where we went, like how was it? Wasn't we never once talked about, hey, where'd you work? What are your strengths, or so on and so forth, right? 2.5 hours into it, I look down and I look at his resume. I'm like, hey, Joe, you haven't been anywhere for more than 2 years, and 2 years is the longest stint you have on this thing. And I'm like, why? And his very honest response was, he goes, I don't get along with owners. And I said, okay, that's honest. Why? He goes, because you guys promise and you don't deliver. And he's like, Reza, I'll tell you, if I ever in this kitchen. If you want to bring me on in a anything comes in a pre-packaged sauce, right? Anything. It doesn't matter if it's a dressing or whatever, that's the day that I walk,
Wow.
right? We just entered 6 years with Joe, with us, right? Joe's about to fly to, he was here 2 weeks ago, and he's about to fly here on Sunday for our opening here, right? But 6 years, and but because I had to deliver on my promise, and he delivered on his.
So you guys see, what I'm hearing from you is there is love in everything that you're doing, and you're making love profitable. You're
Yes,
There's love between you and the employees and sharing that. There's love in how you guys make the food and the drinks and sharing that with the customers. And you're saying that if that love isn't there, that the experience that you want your customers to have won't be there. It won't be the same experience because the work environment won't be that, we won't feel like family. And the food that then is put in front of people, the drink that's made won't feel as good in the way it's you know put in front of you, and also in the way that it's made, because that love isn't there. So I feel like it's all about making sure that you have the right environment and culture within your business to deliver a quality product that is made with love and care. And I'll add one last thing is I've been to your businesses, to your restaurants, and I can tell you, I can feel that love between you and the people who work for you. It's like a close relationship. It's like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Very loving, and you can, it's not just surface nice, you can feel how people reciprocate, uh you know so I just, that's my observation of you in your environment.
the greatest compliment. Thank you. It's the
Absolutely.
greatest compliment.
No, it's the fact, it's a truth. So we're at time. Last question: what does growth mean to you at this point in your life?
Growth is having growth means having enough to provide. And again, I bring money into it because we can't survive without it, right? But creating a balance between that and everything else that matters. And the thing that really matters to me is my presence in my two sons' lives and what they take from that. And it doesn't mean that I stay home and try to make every soccer match and every swimming meet and so on and so forth, but being there so they know that they're loved. And if I'm not there, making sure that my presence is known and creating that balance between that and providing for them. So they have both those securities. And that's a tough thing to do. Creating balances in anything in life is the most difficult thing to do. But that's the one that matters the most. That's growth for me. That's success for me. If I can create that balance and make sure that they're raised properly without feeling neglect, and I'm there for all the important parts, and yet they know that they have enough security that they don't have to worry about where they're sleeping at night and what they're eating and so on and so forth. That to me is the ultimate success and growth.
I love that answer, and it's so true. It's that balance that makes everything you do worthwhile.
Yes.
Uh, so, okay, that's it, man. That's it. Thank you so much for being here.
For
Uh,
having me.
any last things you want to share with the audience?
I really appreciate what you said. You said something at the beginning. I was going to touch on it. You said I had a big heart. The funny thing is, I was telling my general manager here, Mo, about you. I said what I said to him right after you and I were on FaceTime real quick to figure out how to get on online. I said to him, not only is this kid brilliant, he doesn't have a bad bone in his body. He's one of the kindest human beings I've ever known in my life. So for you to reciprocate that means the world to me, man. That's the last thing I want to tell you. You really are an exceptional human being.
Thank you so much, man. I really, really, really appreciate that. So, um, thanks again. It's Reza from Bar 25 in Aruba. If you're never in Aruba or Newburyport, Massachusetts, head up Bar 25 and See you guys next time on another episode.
Awesome.